A suburban shootout has left 6 people dead, including a police officer, in what investigators say was a drug deal gone wrong. 2 gunmen barricaded themselves inside a US corner store and opened fire.
A siege in the suburbs. Midday on the streets of New Jersey, and a gun battle after a police officer was ambushed. Police rushing to the scene, climbing onto roofs, taking cover behind cars, walls, even garbage bins. This officer firing at the gunmen who barricaded themselves in a corner store. Thousands of rounds were fired, police using drones and helicopters. The siege lasting hours as police slowly cleared the area. Finally, an explosion and heavily protected officers moved in.
We begin with crash investigators who will begin looking for answers today in a deadly plane crash in British Columbia. Authorities say the small plane crashed on Gabriola Island around 6 p.m. local time. Now that is near Nanaimo, just off the coast of Vancouver Island. The RCMP will only say there are multiple fatalities. There are no survivors. There is also no word on how many people were on board or the type of plane that crashed. But witnesses say they heard a loud noise and saw the plane spinning out of control just before it went down.
Paramedics and firefighters rush into a dark, foggy scene that's flooded in emergency lights on Gabriola Island Tuesday night after a deadly plane crash here just after 6 p.m.
It was a new dawn for aviation history. At exactly 8:25 Pacific time, the first prototype electric commercial seaplane took off from Harbour Air's sea terminal in Richmond, in a first for Canada and the world. The 750 horsepower motor made little sound as it took a 3-minute flight along the Fraser River before landing successfully. The DC-8 de Havilland plane aims to be the first of its kind to be used in commercial aviation. Tuesday's flight is a culmination of 11 months' work between Harbour Air and Imaginex, an electric aeronautical engineering company. And while it currently doesn't have the license to carry passengers, Harbour Air believes it's the future for greener, safer and cheaper aviation.
Now we're going to move on overseas to an attack overnight on the biggest U.S. military base in Afghanistan. A powerful suicide bomb going off near a gate at Bagram Air Base, followed by gunfire.
Robin, this was a powerful suicide bomb targeting a medical building near to the Bagram Air Base. 6 Afghans were wounded on the attack on this facility, which is being built to help local people. There were no U.S. casualties and the base remains secure. There's not yet been a claim of responsibility, but both the Taliban and ISIS stage attacks on a near daily basis in Kabul and other parts of the country. Now, this bomb was so big that homes nearby were destroyed and a large mosque damaged. All this just days after US-Afghan peace talks resumed. There are around 12,000 US troops in Afghanistan, which President Trump has long said he wants to bring home.
The tribal elders of the Dhikar province gather for an emergency meeting. In the wake of a violent crackdown on demonstrators in the provincial capital Nasiriyah, they say they're attempting to fill the security and governance vacuum left by the Iraqi state.
Today, the current government has lost the trust of the people. They can't do anything because the protesters are against them, and they slaughtered the sons of our province and Iraq.
The governor of the province has resigned, and Parliament has dissolved the local council. It's not clear who is in charge.
They want to appoint a new governor as if nothing happened. The parliament will vote on the new governor and he will be approved by the president. But how will you convince the demonstrators to accept him?
The leaders forge a joint statement demanding the resignation of parliament and early elections.
We're going to go to some good news now, and this was just announced moments ago. The Time Person of the Year is 16-year-old climate change activist Greta Thunberg. Now, you remember when the Swedish team took on UN world leaders at the climate change summit. I mean, 16 years old. Congratulations to her. She had a passionate plea garnering a lot of attention. Times Business Person of the Year, somebody we all know.
Who?
CEO of Disney, Bob Iger, who he's holding. Yeah, he's holding illustration of him and Baby Yoda.
After years of delay, finally, 4 U.S. military bases are returned to South Korea. The allies will continue talks to determine responsibilities for the decontamination of current bases used by the USFK.
The U.S. returned 4 military bases to South Korea, Camp Siegel and Long in Wonju, Camp Market in Pupyeong, and the Shade Range parcel at Camp Hovi in Dongducheon. The return of these installations were delayed for the past decade due to disagreement regarding costs and methods of decontamination. The two sides agreed at the 200th Joint Committee meeting of the Status of Forces Agreement at Camp Humphreys held Wednesday that the bases be returned on the condition that the Allies continue consultations on base decontamination.
The conditions are appalling in the biting cold. This was no way for already desperate people to be living on the doorstep of Europe. The buses brought no comfort. The only way they'd hoped to leave Vuciac camp was via Bosnia's northwest border into Croatia, the so-called Balkan route to the European Union. Instead, roughly 600 migrants from places like Syria, Afghanistan and Pakistan are being rehoused in a former military barracks near the capital, Sarajevo. Better conditions, perhaps, but in the wrong direction. It took months of criticism by international organizations on the ground to convince the Bosnian authorities to do something about Vuciac camp. In freezing temperatures, human rights officials warned people would start dying here without running water or proper heating.
And now to some breaking news from Washington, D.C., where the State Department has just announced that it's designating Mohammed al-Uthaybi, that's the former consul-general of Saudi Arabia in Istanbul. He's accused of gross human rights violations in the murder case of Saudi dissident journalist Jamal Khashoggi.
Basically, it means that this gentleman and his family can no longer be allowed into the United States. Now, as you mentioned, Mohammed al-Uthaybi, he was already sanctioned because of the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, along with more than a dozen others. And those were the much more serious sanctions. Those could have included an asset freeze. But so why now? Why are they doing this? Well, the State Department release that just came out said this is International Human Rights Day. So they picked 2 people. He is one of them. So the sanctions against him, not all that significant,